So my name is Lauren Stanton. I am 31 years old. I grew up in between Michigan and Florida. I was born in Daytona. My dad brought me up to Michigan when I was around 2 years old. He kind of got me and my sister away from my mom, her issues, her drinking. There was some stuff that I never really learned about that he didn't ever really tell me about, but he got us out of there. And we moved in with my grandmother. He did whatever he had to take care of us. He worked plenty of jobs. He's always been a guy that just real like strict. If you pay your bills on time and you do everything that you need to do, then everything will be fine. I don't think he ever, missed a payment on anything. He's always been real responsible when it comes to that. I do believe he had his own issues doing drugs, but once we were born, he kind of said, you know what, like I have kids now, I have to stop. He always had his natural ice though. He always drank beer. No matter what, he's always smoked pot. Just been kind of normal. Never stopped him from anything. I don't know how he did that, but never stopped him from getting up in the morning and going to work. So my sister is 18 months older than I am. She always kind of protected me and looked out for me. I was born with a bone disorder. It's called osteochondromatosis. I have essentially like too many bones, a lot of them. And I had my first surgery when I was 4 years old on my shin. And from then I've had probably 11 surgeries. You'd think that that would have gotten me probably into opiates, but it wasn't. I grew up with my mom coming back from Florida. She moved in. I guess my mom and dad kind of reconciled a little bit. She wanted to be a part of our lives, and so she came up to Michigan. I remember growing up in a house just toxic. My mom and dad fought a lot. She was a severe alcoholic. I remember waking up, and she'd be passed out and you could just smell the alcohol on her coming out of her pores, and it always made me real sick to my stomach. And I would always tell myself that I would never end up that way. I guess she didn't really know any better. She and my dad got divorced when I was in the 4th grade. They, I guess, couldn't make it anymore. He couldn't stand her and her drinking, and just, she always worked in bars, bartender, coming home real late at night all the time. And then my mom and dad got divorced, and I can't remember if we were asked if we wanted to stay with my dad, but I would have chosen my dad. And he got custody of us. We went with her on the weekends. She remarried to somebody, I don't know how they met, but they moved into their own place together, and we would go over there and see them. She got a little bit better, it seemed like, but we didn't really have a whole lot of interaction with her throughout the week and what she did. So my sister and I, we were okay with my dad. We loved him, and he learned how to brush our hair the right way. He learned how to put braids in my hair for school. Just, trying to be a dad of 2 girls that he had no idea what he was doing. I wanted to get into gymnastics real young. I loved it. It was everything that I wanted to do. I would sit and watch the Olympics and try to do everything that they did. They couldn't really afford for me to be in classes, so I would just practice and practice and practice and do everything that I could do on my own. I remember sitting and watching just ESPN when they had the gymnastics going, and I would just sit in front of the TV and not move. It was my favorite. And at some point, I remember like my dad, he left a joint in his tackle box, and I don't know if I was in the 4th grade or 5th grade. I remember trying to smoke, and I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know how to flick a lighter, but I figured it out, and I lit the joint, and I was sitting in the middle of the floor in my room, and I didn't know if I inhaled. I don't know if I got stoned, but I knew that something was different. I was just kind of giggling, and my dad came in and he found me like that, and I still had the weed. My room smelled like weed, and he was like, "You're grounded. I don't know why you did this." And I like looked at him like, "Well, you do it. Why can't I do it?" And so he, you know, tried to have a conversation with me. He grounded me and then ended up sending me outside to play at the park anyways. So somewhere in there, my sister and I went with my mom to go cash a check. It was nighttime. We were at a liquor store, and the guy that drove us turned around in the back seat and was trying to get us to like look at him. He had his penis out. He was trying to get me to touch him, and my sister, her being like the protector, chose to do it instead. She told him that she'll do whatever he wanted and to leave me alone. So after a while, she ended up talking about it with my cousin, and that's when the police got involved. And like I believe he went to jail for a while. But she always looked out for me, and even in that moment, like she chose to take care of me instead of her. I did really well in school for the most part. I liked school. Even living with my mom, it was kind of like my escape of getting out of there and not having to deal with anything that was going on at home. I remember when I had chicken pox, I got my report card, and the teacher noted on my report card that even though I had chicken pox and was out of school for a while, like I still did all my homework and did really well. It was important to me, but somewhere in there, I started growing into like a little young lady, and I asked my dad if we could live with my mom. I knew, like, you know, my period was coming. I knew that we just needed a woman. And so she had her own apartment with my stepdad, and my sister and I moved in with her. So it was okay for the most part. She still was working in bars. He was kind of strict. Like, I remember he would tape the door, put like tape like at the door frame to see if we would go in there when he wasn't home. And I never understood why he did that, because it was like he always thought that we were sneaking in his room. And like we had cats, and so the cats would get in there, and we would get in trouble for breaking the tape off of the door hinge. It was really strange. But we woke up in the middle of the night, the phone was ringing, and my mom was calling from jail. So she had gotten arrested for a DUI leaving the bar. And I remember hearing my stepdad in the other room saying, you know, "I can't believe this. Why are you doing this? And I'm not coming to get you, and you're just going to have to live it out and stay there." And so we both just went back to sleep, like pretending like we didn't hear anything that was going on. And the next morning he sat us down and told us, like, "Your mom got in some trouble last night. She's going to be gone for a while." So she did have prior DUIs. She ended up staying there. I want to say it was around 18 months that she was gone. And my sister and I stayed with my stepdad. And I'm not sure why we didn't go back with my dad. I still don't understand it. And when I asked him about it, he said he didn't know either. But we just stayed there with him. He was kind of mean to us sometimes, but I kind of just dealt with it. So my mom got out. She was on tether. And I remember her bringing us to like Alateen meetings. And like we didn't understand, you know, why we were there, what was going on. I was in counseling, And I remember drawing a picture of like a police car and my mom, and like question marks all over the page. Like, why is she doing this to us? And I think somewhere in there she ended up, I don't know if she violated or what happened, but she went back. She was in a work release program, and we would go and see her. And all of the ladies in the work release program would draw us pictures and say, you know, she talks so much about you and she loves you so much. And like, I just didn't feel it because she wasn't there. So I eventually got into gymnastics classes, and I loved it. I did really well. I wanted to be like an Olympic gold medalist. Like, I had this whole dream in my life that this is what I was going to do. And so I would stay out all night until like past dark, just doing everything that I could. My stepdad would help me with my crunches in the morning. I would do sit-ups. I would do push-ups every night before I went to bed. I would do my little training in my room. And like, that was what I loved. So they bought a house, and I lived around the corner from, you know, I had like all the boys in the neighborhood were my best friends. I had a couple of good girlfriends. And I remember deciding that like I wanted to get drunk too. And they had alcohol. I think we were at a party at one of my girlfriend's houses, and I got so drunk that like they had to carry me up the stairs and put me in bed, and I didn't remember what happened the next morning. And I was really embarrassed when I woke up the next morning because I didn't know what was going on. I want to say I was about 11 or 12 when that happened. One of the other girls had stolen like a little roach out of her mom's tin that she had, and she was trying to get me to smoke it, and I tried it, but it wasn't enough to share. So I didn't really go very far with that. But we still drank on the weekends sometimes, just to have fun. I always tried to make sure that I didn't drink too much because of how embarrassed I was the first time, but I did like feeling different. It felt good, and I felt like I was having fun. Something that I couldn't do normally, connect with people. And I guess at some point, like, I kind of felt like my mom, and I understood her. And I didn't really make that connection until later on. I was in the 7th grade, and I was told that I had to have surgery on both my ankles and my wrist at the same time. I had 2 bones in both my ankles that needed to be removed, and then I have a bone in my wrist that needed to be taken out as well. So they decided to do the surgeries at once. I was told that I could never do gymnastics again after that. That if I landed too hard or if I hurt myself in any way, like, it could be really dangerous, and they didn't want me to take that chance. And so my mom said, absolutely not. Like, you're not going to do this anymore. We have to follow what the doctor says. And I was devastated. I hated her. I hated my doctor. I hated the universe because I didn't understand why this was happening to me. And this is the only thing that I love in life. So why can't I just keep going? Like, I'm not going to hurt myself. There's no way. So I went through my surgery. I ended up having to wear air boots on both of my legs for about 6 months. And I couldn't wear pants because they wouldn't fit over the boots. And so I had to wear like long skirts or dresses all the time. And 7th graders aren't the nicest people. You know, I was bullied because of it. I would waddle down to the bus stop every morning, and people would laugh and make fun of me, but I kind of tried to make light of it too. But I didn't have a choice, and it wasn't anything that was like my fault. So at the end of it all, I ended up having all the older kids in school like sign them, and it became like this cool thing. And so from there, I decided, like, I'm just gonna try anything that anybody has to offer me. Like, I started smoking pot heavy. Well, if I can't do what I want to do, then I'm gonna do this instead. And so I would just come home from school and do whatever homework that I had to do, try to appease my parents, and then go out and hang out with all the boys. Now, ever since I was really young, like, I really enjoyed attention from boys. I loved it. I didn't know really that it was going to be like a big issue for me later on, but I would make out with whoever, I would do whatever with whoever wanted me to, just because, like, they thought I was pretty, and so it made me feel pretty too. It made me feel like they liked me and that I was a part of. So we woke up one morning and my mom was telling us that we're leaving and we're going to Florida. We're leaving my stepdad, and I don't even think he really knew what was going on. She had gotten a U-Haul and packed up everything that we had, and drove me and my sister down to Florida, to Daytona Beach, where I was born at, where her brother was. And I remember her calling her brother and saying, like, I need you to get through all these way stations because I can't go through a way station because I don't have a license. And so whenever, like, the cops would ride by us on this trip, like, me and my sister would duck down, and we made it to Florida. I don't know, you know, what we were doing down there. I wasn't even sure how she made that decision or why they were getting divorced. So I want to say we moved in with my dad's brother first. And he lived, like, right on a golf course in a really beautiful house with a pool. And it was just amazing. It was beautiful. I loved it there. And at that time, my mom started drinking really heavily again. She was, you know, having my aunt make whatever cocktails that she could make, and then my mom and my aunt and my sister would all sit in the jacuzzi and drink, as, you know, as much as we could. And I thought it was totally normal. So I think I want to say 12 at this time. I was going into the 8th grade, and, like, nobody really knew me. I didn't know anybody. I was going to a whole nother school in a whole nother state. But of course, when I got there, I found the worst kids possible to hang out with. And I tried to make as many friends as I could. I would invite people over to my house because they would let us drink and we were having fun. So we moved to our own little apartment in Port Orange, Florida. And my mom was working, I think, at a banquet hall at the time. It was my sister, myself, and my mom. Well, my uncle, who was my dad's brother, also moved down to Florida and lived in the same apartment complex. My mom and my dad's brother were sleeping together. And I remember thinking, like, that is so weird. Why would you do that? And, like, being disgusted with both of them. She would, like, sneak over to his house at night, and, like, I'm like, you're not fooling anybody, lady. Like, I know exactly what you're doing. And so she would leave and be gone for a couple of nights at a time, like, doing banquets and stuff. She worked on the beach in Daytona, and she would get, like, a room there because I guess they would be longer. So for her to come home, it was easier for her just to stay there. So myself and my sister would stay home alone. I did learn to surf at that time. I thought that surfing was another escape, and I loved it. So my friends and I would we would go to school, come home, and then get drunk at my house. We'd throw parties. My mom would be gone. She would buy us alcohol, leave us alone, and, you know, I thought it was the life. Like, I thought that this was, like, so awesome. Everybody loved her. Everybody loved me. I provided all the booze and a place to party, and so there was just another form of me getting attention that was negative. My sister had a best friend at the time. Her name was Melody. She was 16, and it was about to be prom time. Well, my sister and her friend ended up getting some beer from somewhere else, and I remember Melody being so drunk that she couldn't drive home. My sister called her father to tell her father, like, she can't drive. She is not, I'm not letting her get into the car like this. There's no way. And I think that she took a Xanax too, but she was just out of it. And her dad told her that if she didn't get home by a certain time, then she wasn't going to go to prom. So she got into the car and she left our house, and a couple of minutes later she got into a head-on collision leaving our house and died. It was devastating for everybody. Like, her car was the crashed car that was outside of the high school that they do for homecoming and prom every year. And all of the kids in the high school kind of had it out for myself and my sister because, you know, how do friends let friends drive drunk? And we didn't. Like, my sister did everything that she could to try to get this girl to stay home, and there was nothing that we could do. So my sister left Florida and came back up and lived with my dad. I didn't really hear a whole lot from her after that. She, you know, came up and did, I think she did better than she was living with my mom. But at this time, now it's only me and my mom. And I had a boyfriend. He was 16, I was 13. And he was a major pothead, just got me stoned all the time. He had dropped out of high school, and I loved him to death. He was so sweet, but he would come over after work every night. He would, like, work the night shift, and he would come over, and he'd knock on my window, and he'd be like, "Lauren, your mom's out there drunk again, passed out on the porch." And, like, I would be so embarrassed. He would, like, okay, well, we got to get out there and get her inside, because she'd be, like, passed out just with a beer in her hand, whatever, just drunk. And I was like, this is such a mess, man. It didn't make any sense to me. So somewhere along there, we lost that apartment. We moved to another place. It was like a little like studio apartment that was underneath of another house. And I had, you know, my buddies that lived next door. I had all the guys in the neighborhood that were my buddies. We would just smoke pot, and it was fine. Like, we would go surfing, smoke pot, go to school. Sometimes I skipped school. I don't know. But at one point, things just kind of took a turn for the worst. My dad came and got me. I guess my mom called him and told him that I was out of control. And it was, like, all by her acceptance, so I didn't really understand why she was doing that to me. So my dad came and got me. He drove from Michigan to Florida. I didn't know that he was coming, and I came home from school and he was there and drove me back to Michigan. I hated it. I went to high school in Michigan for a little while, and I started doing ecstasy with a girl that lived around the block from me. We loved it. We hung out with older guys. They would just feed us ecstasy, and we would go to parties downtown Detroit. And I skipped school. I think I got even worse at that point. So my aunt picked me up from school one day, and she drove me down to Detroit, like down like in the thick of the hood, and just was like, "This is what you're gonna look like if you keep doing this to yourself. Like, this is where you need to get out and walk. You think you can handle this, then you need to get out and walk." And I remember being so scared, like, I'm not getting out. No way I'm not getting out. And she was trying to leave me down there, like, to see if I could hang, you know, like, trying to scare me. And, you know, I was like, she's not going to do that. So we ended up getting home, and I decided, like, I'm going back to Florida. My dad allowed for it, and when I got to Florida, a couple of days later, it was the 3 hurricanes that hit back to back. It was Charlie, Isabel, and Francis hit back to back. So the first hurricane that hit wasn't as bad, but Isabel hit and ruined everything in our house. We lost everything that we had. My surfboard was floating, like the game Battleship had knocked over, and like the little battleship boats were floating in the water, because when we opened the door, the water was coming out of our house. And so we had absolutely nothing. And FEMA didn't really do a whole lot for us. We ended up staying on a church bench, sleeping, and my landlord gave us another apartment that I guess he gave my mom the same amount of rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. We lived in that apartment together with no furniture except for beds for months. There was no couches, and me and my friends would all just sit in a circle in the middle of the floor and smoke pot. She had all these different boyfriends all the time, in and out, and I remember thinking, like, she is a mess, man. I could never do that to myself. And I didn't really care, though, because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted to do, so it didn't matter. So she had one boyfriend that was a truck driver, and he would come into town and they would party, and then he would go off and leave. Well, he had asked her to get some crack, and so she came to me knowing that I knew everybody that could get whatever I wanted or whatever she wanted, and so she called it something else. I can't remember what it was that she called it. So I called my friend and asked him, hey, can you get this? And I didn't really know what it was, but he was like, yeah, let me see. I'll make a couple phone calls. So she gave me $100, and I went and got it, and I gave it back to her. And like a couple more times after that happened, I decided, like, I'm going to do this too. And so I told her, you need to show me how to do this because I want some. And she was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. You don't even know anything about it. And I said, well, I know how to get it. So either you show me the right way how to do it, or I'm going to figure it out on my own. So I remember going into the bedroom, and she made a can and put ashes on it. And like, I was like, what is this? And we were standing in my closet. It was me and my best friend standing in my closet, and I hit it. And I remember blowing out smoke, and I didn't feel anything. And I was like, well, that was stupid. And so she's like, oh, you didn't get a good one. So she showed me again, and she told me, like, breathe, 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 breathe. And I did it. And as soon as I exhaled, like, I just felt, this is it. This is what I like. And I was 14. My best friend tried to tell me, like, you can't do that. Like, you're smoking crack. And I'm like, so what? So what? Like, it doesn't matter. I got expelled from school for bringing a joint to school at one point. And so I ended up going to a alternative school where, like, all the work was done on the computers. And we had gone out and gotten a bunch of mushrooms out of the field one night. And I tripped all night long and then ate some in the morning before the bus came. And so when I went to school, I was tripping, and I kept telling the principal, like, I can't be here, I'm sick. I can't be here, I'm sick. I can't be here, I'm sick. And he was like, Miss Stanton, if you leave today, you're not coming back. You've missed X, Y, and Z days of school, and we can't have all this truancy going on. Like, I'm going to call the cops on you for how much school you miss. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I call my mom. My mom comes to get me. And she brings me to her restaurant where she was working on Beachside in Daytona. It was Bubblegum Shrimp Company. And I remember tripping on mushrooms, sitting there, rolling silverware. And that was my punishment, rolling silverware, for getting kicked out of school. And I never went back. She was like, well, you can just get your GED. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. Like, we'll work on it together. I never got my GED. I'm still working on it. So from there, it got worse. I was just a free-for-all. I was tripping on quercetin pills, taking Dramamine, drinking Robitussin, whatever it was that I could get my hands on to make me feel different. And I loved it. I thought I was having a great time. And all of the kids in school that like, you know, would come and hang out still that were still enrolled in school, I would try to get them high. So for parents to say like, you can't hang out with that kid, she's a bad influence, like I was the bad influence. I didn't care what anybody said. Like I wanted you to feel how I felt, so let's do this. I would smoke salvia and try to recruit as many people as I could to smoke salvia with me because it was so interesting and like it's such a crazy trip that I thought everybody needed to feel this. So like you need to come try this. And I was just a mess, man. I didn't care, you know, what was going on. I went to a party and I met this girl, Erica. She was doing like this modeling stuff. It was called Florida Teen Models. And she was like, well, I can probably get you into it. And I'm like, yeah, cool, all right. You know, more attention for Lauren, of course. I thought that I was so cute and so pretty and like everybody needed to see me. So I got introduced to the guy that did the photo shoots. He would pay me $50 and I would get clothes. People would, you know, have like requests, like pantyhose requests, all kinds of stuff, just weird stuff in lingerie. And I think I was 14 still at the time. So here I am, taking pictures in stiletto heels with next to nothing on. And I had my own website. It was called lovelymelissa.com. And I had fans that would pay for each one of my photo shoots that I did. And at the time, I didn't realize that, like, they were all pedophiles, and it was really, really sick. I just liked feeling good, and I thought that, like, it was going to get me somewhere one day. So, like, he would tell me that you can't be directly in front of the camera, like, on all fours. Like, you can't do that. So you have to angle your body just a little bit so that, like, the camera can't see directly into, like, in between your legs. And I guess that was his way of getting around it not being child porn. So I did that for a while. I had a guy from St. Louis that would send me money. He would pay my phone bill. He would, you know, Western Union me whenever I wanted him to. And so that's how I started paying for a lot of my drug use. From the same girl that got me into that modeling, introduced me to a guy who, he was a lot older than me, probably 19 or so. And I ended up just moving in with him. His mom was a heroin and meth dealer, and he was doing heroin. And I was still on and off smoking crack, but doing whatever. And I remember him saying one time, like, they're all over there spun out, man. They're all over there spun out. They've been up for days and days and days, and they're acting crazy. And I remember thinking, like, what does that mean? And so I asked him, like, what are you talking about? And he was like, yeah, they're all over there doing ice. And I said, well, what's that? And he was like, it's meth. Like, they've been up for days. And I was like, well, can I try some? And he was like, no, absolutely not. And I'm thinking, like, you're doing heroin. How are you going to tell me that I can't do something? So I made my way over there, and I lied to the lady, told her I was 16, which I don't know how that made it any better, but she showed me how to smoke crystal meth. I stayed up for probably 4 days after that and cleaned and did everything. I was just running around like a mad person, but I loved it. And so I never went back home. I moved in with one of my best friends at the time, and her sister and her mom, and we would all just do crystal meth and stay awake and dance and just have fun. At some point, her mom tried to get me back in school. Like, she signed all the papers for me to go back to high school, and I dropped out again. And my friend was really mad at me because she's like, well, my mom did this for you, and, like, you're going to mess it up anyways. And so we stayed, hanging out for a while. But I had went to one house that was, like, somebody had just moved out of it, and I was digging through all this stuff, like, that people had left behind. And there was a guy in there, and he scared me. And he, like, popped out of nowhere, and he was like, look what I found. And we're both, like, super high. And so he shows me all this stuff that he had came across, and like I talked to him for a few minutes, and he was like, oh, you're not doing the good shit. Like, you need to do what I'm doing. And so he gave me some of what he had, and he ended up being a meth cook. So I was 15, he was 37, and I moved to Orlando with him in a meth lab and stayed there until I was probably 17, 18. And he would show me what to do. He would have me doing all of like the side work, whatever needed to be done. Like I would be scraping matches, I would be cleaning different things that he needed to do what he needed to do. Like there was spray paint all over the walls. And I would just write, I thought it was awesome, man. I'm with this older guy and like he's showing me how to do this, and like I'm learning a lot, and I'm like in my mind thinking I'm some kind of fantastic chemist or something. And there we go, another sick guy. He was 37. And I just thought that I was like in training. He was training me to be something better. And we moved all over the place. I hadn't talked to my dad in a long time. Kind of left my mom alone. It was just me and him and his friends and doing drugs. And I thought that he cared about me because he would make me eat in the morning when I woke up before I got high. And that was how I knew that he cared about me, because he wouldn't let me not eat. And so he was standing at the stove one night, and like I came up behind him and I was messing with him and like play fighting with him in his back, and he turned around and kicked me in my stomach like halfway across the room. And I like was really taken back by it. I didn't know why he did that, but he had apologized, and he was like, I didn't mean it. It was a reflex. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. But you can't come up behind me like that. Like, you scared me. And so I was okay with that apology. It was fine. So it was me and the best friend that I lived with. She was his best friend's girlfriend. She was 17 or 18. And then me and my boyfriend. And we just, you know, lived there, and I would watch the cameras, and we would get into fights. He would beat me up, and like every time he would apologize, and I would think like, well, he said he was sorry, so it's fine. You know, he didn't mean it. I did something wrong. So I had gotten away from him. He had given me a black eye, and I ran away from him in the middle of the night one time. And I tried to go back home to my mom, and she told me, like, you can't stay here. So I went and I slept on the beach in Daytona overnight. I didn't have anywhere to go, and I didn't know what to do. I want to say I was like 17. And so me and another girl that I was real close with, we had went and got some stuff for somebody else to make us some meth. And as we were leaving that house, I had like 7 grams on me. And we were leaving the house, and at the end of the road, there was like a gas station on the right-hand side, and then across that was a dead end, but it had like some warehouses. And we seen like spotlights on us, and we were like, what is going on? So as soon as she got out of the car, like the cops rushed us. They said, like, you're leaving an own meth lab. This car has been used in the transportation of manufacturing chemicals. Threw me on the ground. Had all kinds of pictures of me, like leaving Walgreens, leaving different stores. And I'm sitting there handcuffed, like looking at these pictures, and they're throwing pictures down in between my feet. And they're like, we don't even want you. Like, we want him, talking about my ex-boyfriend and all of his friends. And I'm like, I don't know that guy. That's not even me in the pictures. You can't prove that's me. And, you know, so I ended up going to jail for possession with intent to sell, possession of illicit chemicals with intent to manufacture and intent to distribute when I was 17. I had gotten out, and, you know, I went back to my ex-boyfriend's house, and like they strip searched me, like thinking I was working with the cops and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, I didn't say anything, don't worry, like, I got you, it's fine. And so, I don't know, we kind of separated from there. I was released on my own recognizance, so I was supposed to be going to court on and off. I didn't really ever go to court. I did go one time, and my mom said that she wasn't going to help me. And so I ended up getting put on probation. And I was unsuccessful at probation. I was supposed to be on probation until I was 19. And I started smoking crack again, real heavy. And I was just living in and out of different people's houses. I met this older lady. She was like a Backpage girl. And she kind of took me in and showed me what to do. And she was, you know, helping me sell myself. And, you know, I was okay with all of this. It was fine. I had gotten some, you know, some stuff from this guy. And then he called me the next day and he was like, hey, can you get me some ecstasy pills? And I said, yeah, sure, I can get them. So he wanted 10 of them. And I walked with him to the gas station. He gave me the money. I got the stuff from the guy at the gas station, and like I put them in my jacket pocket, and I didn't look at what he gave me. So as we were leaving, I pulled it out, and like he ripped me off. He ended up giving me like Xanax footballs or something. And so I looked at the guy, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like that wasn't my fault. I didn't know. And he told me like, you have 24 hours to get my money back. And I didn't. Like I ended up, you know, running the streets smoking crack all night. And so he came the next day for me, and I didn't have any money. So he started taking stuff out of this lady's house that I lived at. I was like, I'm not giving you my phone. I don't care. Like, you're not getting my phone. So I'm on the bed like this, holding my phone. And he's like, you know, puts a gun to my head. And I'm like, you're not getting my phone. You can shoot me. And so he ended up pistol whipping me. And my whole entire face was just like instantly like swollen and black and blue, and I looked crazy. And he took my phone and he left, and the cop showed up a few minutes later, and I gave them my name. I told them I don't really know what happened. I don't know what you're talking about. They weren't here. And my face was, you know, black and blue. So he's like, what happened to you? And I was like, nothing, I fell. And so he ran my name, and he came back and he said, well, you have a warrant out of, you know, juvenile court, so I have to take you in. So I went back to juvie, and I ended up doing some time in juvie, and then I got sent to a girls program up in the top of Florida, in Greenville, Florida, in the middle of nowhere. I think I was 18 or so at the time when this happened, and so I stayed there. I did everything I needed to do, and I was released on my 19th birthday. I had called my dad, told my dad I want to come home back to Michigan, like I need to get better. I need to stay better. I was clean for a while, so I wanted to stay on that path and get my life together. Well, he gets me a bus ticket, and I start, you know, going upstate, and like I had seen this guy, and I could tell he had just gotten out of prison, and he had a brown paper bag with him. And I looked at him, and like we ended up going to one of the stops at the Greyhound station and just having sex behind a dumpster. Like, who does that? And I thought like I was special to him because, I don't know, like I was his first person out of prison. I'm not really sure what my thinking behind that was. But I get back to Michigan, and I was completely jaded. I was somebody totally different than my dad knew, and I was really embarrassed because I had changed so much. In the meantime, my sister was in the Army, and she had ended up going to prison in Germany for something to do with acid and stuff that she was dealing with over in the military. She was military police, and she ended up in prison in Germany. So I tried, you know, to do good for a little while, but like I had seen too much. I had been through too much. I didn't relate with my dad. I didn't know what to say to him. I wasn't his little girl anymore. And so I told him, like, I'm going back to Florida. I had recruited this guy that I went to high school with. I told him, yeah, like we can go back to Daytona. It's no problem. I'll find a place to live. All of this and that. Like, just come with me. Just come with me. And so we ended up just going to Florida. He had no idea what he was doing. He had never been there. And so I bring him to this house down there. And he was like, if you do drugs, I'm going to leave. And I was like, I'm not going to. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So I ended up getting a job at a little Japanese restaurant on the beach. And I had ran into my ex-boyfriend's best friend, who was my best friend's boyfriend. And so I seen him. I went to his house, and I ended up shooting meth with him. And I came home to my new boyfriend, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be up for a couple of days. Like, you might as well just hang with me. And he was like, nope, I'm leaving. And he left me. So now I'm like homeless pretty much, just I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. I ended up getting a little studio apartment behind a bar, and I'm hanging out with my ex-boyfriend's best friend. So he tells me out of nowhere one day, like, Lauren, I've been in love with you since you were a little girl, and I want you to run away with me. And I'm like, to where? And he's like, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Just be ready when I call you. And so he calls me and says, I need you to pack your stuff. We're leaving. And I'm like, well, where are we going? We're going to Key West. And I don't even know where Key West is on a map. But I said, okay, let's go. I left my apartment. I left my job. I get into a car with this guy, and we drive all the way down to Key West. We get there. He had like $1,000. We ended up getting an apartment. And we took a walk that night when we got there, kind of check out the island and seeing what was going on. And I walked into a Japanese place there, and I applied, and I got hired at this Japanese restaurant. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be great. Like, I got a job already. Everything's going to be fine. And so we get home. He tells me, like, I have to go back to Daytona. Like, I have to get some more supplies. He was cooking meth, too, so he needed what he needed in order to continue doing that down there. And I was like, I'm not going back with you. I'm going to stay here. He said, just come back 24 hours. That's all I need is 24 hours. So I was like, okay, well, if it takes longer than that, like, I'm coming back by myself. And he drives us back up to Daytona. He's dilly-dallying, doesn't have enough money to get back. So I take some of his stuff. I go to sell some to somebody else. And I gave this guy a gram for $60, and he gave me the $60, and then he gave me an extra $100, and he was like, that's for your trip, just spend it out of town. And I was like, okay. So then I get back, and I'm all excited, we can go back now, it's fine, I got the money. And somewhere along the lines, like, that money that he gave me got wet, and I was like, this money isn't real. And he was like, what? No. So he tells me, bring me to that guy. Just bring me to him right now. So I take my boyfriend to this guy's hotel room, and it was all a setup. Like, this guy knew that my boyfriend cooked meth, and so he wanted to know how. So he tells my boyfriend, well, if you show me how to make meth, I'll show you how to make this money, and I'll tell you how to spend it, and, like, you'll never get in trouble, and you'll make tons of money from it. And I was like, oh no, this is too much for me, I'm leaving. So I get on a Greyhound, and I go back to Key West by myself. Don't think I'm ever going to see this guy again. I have this apartment, it's paid for 1 month, and I have this job at the sushi restaurant. So I went to work a couple of days. I don't know a single soul. I'm just doing what I can. And so I come home from work one night. I am laying in bed, and I wake up, and he has, like, the entire bed, like, with money all over the bed. And he's telling me, like, I'm never going to have to cook again, ever. I'm never going to have to cook again. Like, I got it. So he learned how to make counterfeit money. He was washing the ink off of 5s and 10s and putting 100s and 50s on it. So that way it's still marked with a pen. And, like, if you hold it up, you can see the line. The only way that you could really tell was either it got wet or, like, if you looked for the face in the background. But nobody really ever looked for that. So I would go to work every day. He would go to different garage sales and spend the money. He would take like a 20, buy something for $2, and then get $18 in real money back. And he did that all day long. He would sometimes send me with some change for my customers. Like if I had to break 100 or something, like I would give them back fake money. Well, we ended up spending thousands of dollars in fake money down there. But I was having a blast. It was probably like my favorite time ever. I just had so much fun. I was so carefree, and I didn't have any responsibilities, nothing. So, the banks started handing this money out, and the heat came down, and so he ended up leaving me. I came home from work one day, and my apartment was empty. There was a newspaper article about like the counterfeit money that had been circulating around Key West, and he freaked out and left. Well, I ended up chasing him. We ran into the Secret Service. And then we went our separate ways after that. He went on doing what he was doing, and I went back down to Key West. I went back to get my job, you know, see like could I still work there. And they were like, yeah, you can work here. So I had learned how to make sushi in the meantime. So I was working 3 days behind the sushi bar and 4 days as a waitress. I had my own knives. I had my own jacket. Like it was so cool. I loved it. I had these old, you know, sushi chefs showing me how to do this, and I thought, like, this is what I'm going to do. You know, this is great. But I get back there, and I go to show up to work the next day, and they tell me, like, the Secret Service came here looking for you. You can't have a job here. So now I have nothing. And there was an eviction notice on my door. I had $20. And so I go to the liquor store and I get a scratch-off ticket. And I said, look, I tell myself, if I win on this scratch-off ticket, I'm going to go to the Ziggy Marley concert that they got going on. If not, I'm going to go dance. Of course, I lost the money. And so I went to the strip club down the street from my house. And I danced. And I'd never been a stripper before. I didn't know what I was doing. But I learned. And so the concert got rained out, and everybody ended up coming to the strip club, and I made over $1,000 that night. And so I was like, this is it. Like, this is all I have to do. I'm fine. I lived in a cat house across the street where all the other strippers lived. Like, people from all over the world would come to Key West to dance. And so I did okay for a little while. But like, I got back into crack real heavy. I found my way around Key West, finding where all the dealers were and all of that. And then eventually, like, I couldn't really dance a whole lot anymore because I kept getting arrested. So I was 19 when I moved there. From the time I was 19 until I was 23, I had been arrested probably 22 times. Just in and out, possession charges, different charges, paraphernalia charges. I did do 6 months in jail at one point. But I would always just jump on the Greyhound and go back to Daytona or go to Orlando. I was just like a free bird. Like, I had no one. And I thought that my place in people's lives was to just come and, like, you know, have a little fun and then leave. Like, I never felt like I was a permanent person for anybody. I would never stay in anyone's life for very long because I had to go. So I would meet, you know, really rich guys. They would take me different places, spend a lot of money on me. I had a lot of fun, but I kept getting in trouble. So I got to the point where, like, somebody told me, like, let's get you out of Key West. I'm going to take you to Miami, to South Beach, and you can dance there. Like, I'll get a room, and you can dance there. So I get to South Beach with him. I'm thinking everything's going to be fine, but when I get there, mind you, never been to South Beach, he tells me, like, you need to put some high heels on and go walk the strip. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. No way. I'm not about to. You're not. He was trying to pimp me out. And, like, I wasn't okay with that. Like, I was always independent, by myself, not giving anybody my money. Absolutely not. So he forced me to. And I had came back a little while later. I had gotten, like, $600 from some guy. And I came back and I was going to try to get all my stuff out of there, give him some money, and then leave him. But when I got back, the whole hotel that we were at was roped off with caution tape, and this guy was getting carried out on a stretcher. And so, like, I didn't know what was going on, but he had gotten stabbed in his stomach by a Heineken bottle. And he went to the hospital. So now I'm in South Beach all by myself. Don't know a single soul. I'm just here. So I ended up meeting, you know, old Cuban guy. He was probably like 65, 70 years old. He took me to Macy's. He was feeding me all the drugs that I wanted. Didn't speak a lick of English. And he would just, you know, keep me by his side, and just, I would run off sometimes, but then I'd always come back. And so, I would just, you know, leave, and meet other people. I would go, you know, with him, and then I would go back and meet other people. And I just had like all these people in my life that like, I would just like, I was like a little fairy sprinkling my love over the entire Miami South Beach. And I thought that like I was so cute, and people just adored me. But it got to the point where like you know, it just wasn't enough. I would steal from him, so then I got kicked out. Now I ended up in Little Havana, which is like a whole nother section of Miami, where it's nothing but like Cuban people, different Hispanics. And here I am, just a little white girl, you know, 20, 21 years old. Don't know any Spanish, don't know anything. And I meet this guy. He gives me some stuff and tells me, you know, give me a call if you like it. And so I'm looking for him everywhere, and I can't get a hold of him. Nobody will give me his phone number. And I'm like, what is with this dude? Like, why can't anybody like tell me who he is? And come to find out, like, he was, you know, pretty much like a big plug down there, that like he was the guy that gave it to the other guys. And so they would not tell me any of his information because like you don't touch him. But I came across him again, and he gave me his number, and I held on to it because he had like some of the best stuff that I ever had. And then I would end up like different all over South Beach. I would end up different parts of Miami, all over town. And whenever I called, like, he came. He just showed up, and then he would sit there with me and hang out with me. And I would be thinking, why do you want to hang out with me? Like, I'm sitting here smoking crack, dude. You're a dealer. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And I asked him, like, what are you doing? And he's like, I just like your company. You make me laugh. And from then on, like, I was like, wow, he's really interested in me. And so he tells me, you know, stop selling yourself, stop running the streets, don't worry. Like, I'll give you this much a day, and you don't have to do that. You just be with me. And so I went with him. I hung out with him for a little while, and everything was fine. But after a bit, like, what he was giving me per day, it wasn't enough. So then I would steal from him. He would beat me up. I would come back, steal from him again, and it was just like this endless cycle. Like, I would walk around with bruised eyes, busted lips. I went to jail one time for prostitution, and he, you know, he bonded me out. But then we got into another fight. Like, he brings me back to the bondsman's, put me back in jail, and then bonds me out the next morning. Like, different stuff all the time. Like, we was just always fighting. And at first I thought it was because I was stealing from him, but then it just was because I was a crackhead. And I was embarrassing him. But he wouldn't leave me alone. And of course I'm not going anywhere because he had what I wanted. So, he ended up going to jail, and I was alone, like, in Little Havana, and I knew something was wrong, because every time I tried to get high, I would throw up, and I couldn't catch a buzz to save my life. I didn't know what was going on with me, but I felt really sick all the time. It went on for like a month like that, and then my belly started getting bigger. And I knew I was pregnant, but I didn't want to acknowledge it because then that would mean that I had to do something about it, so I ignored it. I eventually passed out at a crack house, and they called 911 on me, and I ended up in the hospital. And that's when I heard my daughter's heartbeat for the first time. She came in and said, like, do you know that you're pregnant? Like, I have to do an ultrasound. And I kind of looked at her. Now, mind you, I'm still in the hospital trying to get somebody to bring me crack up to the hospital in a Taco Bell bag. I'm like, just leave it in the box and bring it up to my room. It's just act like you're bringing me food. Like, I didn't care. And so once I heard my daughter's heartbeat, I was like, oh my God, this is real. I have to do something. And I called my dad, and I told my dad, like, I need to come home. And so he was like, all right, well, I'll clean out the room for you. Like, you got a spot here, don't worry. I said, I'm on drugs. Like, the guy's going to prison. I have nothing. I have nobody. And I have this baby that, I'm pregnant. And before I left, I was walking down the street, and I went to this bus station. It's probably like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I see this guy out there, and I'm just fiending. Like, I just need somebody to get me high. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything, and like, I'm getting ready to go back to Michigan to get clean, so I need to get high. And so I come across this guy, and he's like, well, come with me. Like, I got some. And I'm like, something's wrong with this guy, but like, I won't like acknowledge my instinct, because I wanted to use so bad that I was just like willing to do whatever. So we keep walking down the street, and we keep getting further and further. And I'm like, no, like, I'm not going. He's like, it's just right here. Don't worry about it. It's just right here. And I'm like, well, show it to me, because I don't think you really have it. And he was like, no, I got it hidden. Don't worry. And like, I know something's wrong. Oh, but I had this puppy, this little tiny puppy that I had gotten from someone, gave me a little like Rottweiler puppy, and I had him under my shirt. And so as we're walking, like, I have this puppy under my shirt, and this guy doesn't know that I'm pregnant, because like I'm carrying this puppy because it was a little bit chilly. And so when we get to the house, like, he moves the wood away from the door, and I'm like, this is an abandoned house. Like, I'm not going in there. And he's like, it's fine, don't worry. There's some candles in there. I got it. And so I step inside, and I hear him like lift up one of the couch cushions, and like the glass, flew all over the floor. And he was like, just sit right here. I'm going to go look for a candle. And so I sit on the edge of the couch, and he, comes up behind me and just punches me in my face. And he starts raping me, and telling me like, he's gonna kill me, and all I can think is I'm pregnant, and like, please don't hurt my baby. And so I'm screaming and crying, like, don't hurt my baby, just whatever you do, don't hurt my baby, please, like, I'll do whatever you want. And I just keep thinking about this glass that's next to me on the ground that I heard him shake off, but I can't seem to get myself to reach for it. So he just, he finishes what he had to do, and and then he runs out of the house. I stand up. I'm completely naked. I run outside of this house, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. And some guy comes out, and he's trying to help me, and I'm scared of him because I think he has something to do with it. But he calls the cops, and he brings me, to the hospital, and I ended up just leaving the hospital because I still wanted to get high. Like, I never got high, and so now I'm pissed that all this went down, and like, I still didn't get any drugs out of the situation. So I ended up coming back to Michigan, and my sister, she hooks me up with, Medicaid. She hooks me up with a doctor. She's showing me how to apply for food stamps, and like, everything's gonna be amazing now. Like, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna do this for my daughter, and like, I gotta get myself together. I have to. Because now it's not just me, I'm responsible for something else, and like, I want this baby, and I'm thinking this baby is just going to change my life. It's going to give me a purpose, and it's going to give me a reason to live, and like, this is going to be it. And so I did okay for a couple of weeks, and then I come across some guy in a store, and all it took for me was to tell him that I liked his shoes that he had on, and he gave me a joint, and he gave me his phone number. And so I contacted him that night, and we went out, and he was like, do you do anything else? And of course, I ended up smoking crack again with him. And I was trying to hide it pretty good. I think I hid it pretty well for the most part. But I smoked pretty much my entire pregnancy. I was about 8 months pregnant, and I had left my house for about 3 days. I didn't tell my dad where I was going. And I called my sister to come get me, you know, on like the third or fourth morning, and she comes to get me. It's like 6 a.m. and I walk in, and I look at my dad, and he's like so disappointed in me, and he's just telling me, like, that's my blood in your body too. That's my blood, and you're doing this to my blood? You cannot do this. And so I remember going into my bedroom and thinking, I'm gonna get his shotgun, and I'm gonna make sure that everybody's out in the living room, like, and I'm just gonna blow my brains out. But I'm gonna do it to where they can hear it. Like, they have to be here to hear it, so hopefully they can get me to the hospital and save my baby. But I don't want to live anymore, and she doesn't deserve me. So, or she, you know, she doesn't deserve this. And so, like, I just sat there and I thought about it for hours, like, and I couldn't bring myself to do it. Like, you're being selfish, you know, that's selfish. You have to just do what's right. And so I stayed sober for like the last week of my pregnancy, and I go in to be induced, and the baby was clean, but she still had cocaine in her meconium, so they didn't take her because her system was clean. I told them that I had used, like, you know, in prior months, but CPS was in contact with me. I had to go do an assessment, and on the assessment, like, I lied as much as I could to make it seem like I didn't really need any help. And so I was involved in outpatient services for a little while. I did everything I needed to do just to get CPS out of my life. I got a job at Outback Steakhouse. I was working as a hostess there, and I was doing okay for the most part. She was a beautiful, beautiful girl. She was so happy, and she slept through the night, and she was just always smiling and gorgeous. And you know, my dad and my sister, they just loved her. And she's mixed Hispanic, and like, her dad is Nicaraguan and Cuban, and so she's got these like big gorgeous brown eyes, and I would just sing to her and love her, but it wasn't enough to keep me clean. Like, I still would escape. Like, at nighttime I would leave her sleeping. I wouldn't tell anyone that I was leaving, and I would stay gone all night, like down in Detroit somewhere smoking crack, and come back before my dad left for work in the morning, so nobody knew I was gone. And that went on for a while, and then they found out that, you know, that's what I was doing, and my dad kicked me out, and he told me, like, you leave the baby here, and you need to go get yourself together. Like, I'll take care of her, but you need help, but you can't be here. So I left that night, and then he ended up calling me back a little while later, and he said, you know what? You need to come get your kid. I'm not going to be responsible for this kid. This is your fault. This is your choice, and you need to do something. Like, I changed my mind. I'm not doing it. Like, I'm leaving at this time in the morning. You need to be here to get her. So I came and got her, and I was bouncing around from hotel to hotel. I would drop her off at daycare, and I would trick throughout the day, have my little ad on Backpage, whatever, and pick her up from daycare, and then just be in a hotel room, and, you know, I would put her in the playpen, give her whatever I could, crackers, whatever, and just go in the bathroom and stay there. So that was, you know, a couple months living like that. And she was a lot to handle just because, like, she was getting in my way. And I can't do what I want to do with this little baby, you know. She was like in between a year and 18 months old, I think. So I had gotten a call from CPS, and they told me, like, I need to see you, and I need to see the baby. There's been some allegations, like, when can I meet with you? So I meet them at my friend's house, and when she got there, like, I had an 8 ball, and so I was stoned out of my mind, and she shows up and she was like, well, I need to see the baby. Do you have diapers? She's telling me that like people had said that I was carrying her around without a car seat, that her diaper rash was so bad, that her butt was bleeding. She said that I was having different men in and out of the room prostituting myself. And I was like, that's not true. You know, some of it is true. Like, I have done some things, but that's not true. And she's like, well, I need to drug test you. And I tell her, like, I'm high right now. Like, you don't need to drug test me. I'm going to be dirty for cocaine. And so she's like, okay, well, we have to come up with a safety plan. You have to call someone to come get your daughter. And so, you know, I know my sister is the one that called CPS. She's not getting my baby. I'm not calling my dad. He doesn't want my baby. And so I called my aunt, and she had been clean for quite some time. And I'm like, I need your help. Can you please come get Natalie? You know, CPS, the cops are here, everybody. And so my aunt shows up and takes my daughter, and I just remember feeling so relieved at that moment that I didn't have to carry this kid around with me anymore, and I could just get high in peace. I didn't feel anything else. I didn't feel any remorse. I didn't feel sad. I was just relieved that, like, thank God she's out of my way. And I just, you know, I can just keep going. Like, screw it, whatever. You know, I'll figure it out, you know. It's not too late. Like, I'll get it together in time. And so I went on for a little while. I did see her like 1 or 2 times, and on March 17th, it was St. Patrick's Day, I ended up going to treatment. And I'm like, I'm gonna get it together for my kid. Like, I have to, you know. This is too much. Like, I was miserable out there, knowing that I had this little girl that needed me, and she was just so perfect that, like, I couldn't leave her. So I did the program there. I don't remember anything from it. I don't remember learning really much of anything. I just did what I needed to do, and the night, so we walked over to the gym. So I was in the women's side with the kids. There's another part, and we walked over there where the men were to go to the gym, and I see this guy standing at the nurse's station, and I said something out loud like, damn, you're fine, or something to him. And then I found out his name, and I passed him a note. And so I got out of treatment. I was working, I was doing okay. And I come across his number, we get in contact, and he ended up living like a couple blocks down from me. So we hooked up. We were both in 3-quarter houses, and I was getting visits with my daughter. I was working as a waitress at a restaurant down the street, and he would pick me up and take me to work every night, and we were just inseparable, and I was just head over heels for him. I loved him so much. And like, he was good with my daughter. When I had visits, he would take me to go see her. But I got a phone call one time saying, like, it was my aunt's girlfriend telling me, like, your aunt went to the post office 4 days ago and hasn't been back. So you need to come get your baby. And I couldn't have my baby, so I had to figure out where to put her. So I put her with my mom. And he drove me out there. You know, I'm worried because, like, I didn't like growing up with my mom. Why would I put my kid here? But, like, I didn't want her to go into foster care, so I did what I needed to do. We did okay for a while. Then we started drinking on the weekends. We would get overnight passes, and we would get drunk, go to the casino, and I got drunk enough one night to where I was like, all right, like, let's just get high. And he, like, took one look at me, and he was like, how much money you got? And it was over with. I lost my 3-quarter house that night. I lost my job. I didn't have nothing. All in 24 hours, it was done. So now it's just me and him, and we're like he was a heroin addict, and I was like so against it that I would never do heroin. Like, you're not doing it around me. You're not about to die on my watch. Like, you're smoking crack, bro. And so I wouldn't let him do anything else. It was just me and him. And you know, I ended up like really resenting him because the way that he was when he used, like, I didn't like it. So I would just take his car and go and come back, and then take his car again and go and come back. And he got mad at me enough one night, and he was like, yeah, so, like, like, this has to end. And so I tell him, drop me off in Detroit. And he drops me off in Detroit, and he goes and falls asleep behind the wheel and gets a DUI and goes to jail. I was pregnant again. And I knew I was pregnant again, and I was like, this isn't right. Something's not right. And I felt this way before, like something's wrong. And again, I don't want to acknowledge it, like it's not really happening. So I went on for about 2 months, doing just whatever I could to keep myself going. And I don't think I was really seeing my daughter at the time. I do remember showing up to her birthday party blown out of my mind without any presents and lying to my mom, telling my mom that I left him on the couch because I was in a hurry and I had nothing for her. I couldn't enjoy spending time with her or anything. So I called one program and I tell them, like, I need help, I'm pregnant, can I get in, you know? And so I get in, and I had brought crack with me and my pipe, and I'm thinking, like, I can just get high one more time in treatment. And when I got there, like, it's programmed so strict, so they took my lighter. Like, you're not allowed to have a lighter, people have to take you out to smoke. And I was like, oh shit, now I have these drugs and I need to smoke them, but I can't. So I left the next morning and I stayed out for another couple of weeks. But from that program, I heard about the other program that I went to, the Odyssey House. It was a women and kids program. And so I had called to do a screening for them. I was sitting in a hotel room and I was miserable. And I'm whispering because the guy that I'm with doesn't know that I'm pregnant. So she's asking me all these questions and I'm like, shh, just whispering. She's like, why are you whispering? I'm like, because he doesn't know I'm pregnant. And so she's like, look around. Is this what you want for your life? And I said, no. And she's like, okay, well, you can come right now. And I said, I'm not coming right now. Nope, I might be there tomorrow. So that was on a Monday. I went all the way until Friday, but I kept calling the place, telling them different lies as to why I couldn't make it that day. I even called and told them that I had a miscarriage, and that's why I couldn't come, because I was so afraid that they were going to give my bed away that I didn't want to lose my bed. And so that Friday, it was October 2nd of 2015, I had gotten with somebody. He had given me $100. I spent 60 of it on my stuff, and I had this $40 for a ride to Saginaw to go to treatment, and I just could not spend this $40 no matter what. And so one guy came to pick me up to take me to treatment, and I wouldn't come out of the hotel room, so he leaves me. So now I'm spending the whole entire rest of the day trying to find somewhere to go, or for somebody to drive me to treatment to Saginaw. It's an hour and a half away from Detroit. Like, I need to get there. But I have this $40 that I'm not going to spend. And so I ended up calling somebody, and I'm telling, you know, it was one of my drug dealers, and I say, like, can I just come? Like, I just need a little bit, and blah, blah, blah. So I go there. I am dirty. I hadn't showered. I was wearing the same clothes. I was really embarrassed. Like, I had a boil on my butt cheek. It was just really bad. And I slept with him thinking that I'm going to get, like, at least $50 worth. And after we got done, he tells me, like, you owe me money. I'm not giving you anything. And I was like, oh my God. So now I have nothing. I just did this with this nasty guy for no reason. And so I finally got in touch with somebody else. I was like, look, I'm going to treatment. Can you just give me something for my drive? And the guy that I had bring me, he wanted like a little bit of heroin, and I tell him, like, okay, but like, don't do it with me in the car. And so we get to Saginaw, and I get outside of the program, and I'm like, just drive around the block one more time. Drive around the block one more time. Just one more time. I'm not ready to go in there yet. I'm not ready. And finally we pull up outside, and I was like, okay, like, can I have some of that? And he was like, you don't do heroin. And I was like, that's okay. I'm going to do it now. Like, I need to come down. And so that day I shot heroin for the very first time. And I walked into this treatment center and I was puking. I was sick. I hated it. It was like I was just so broken. I didn't know what to do with myself. And the girl that was doing my intake kept saying, like, it's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. It's okay. You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And I never looked back after that. I woke up, finally actually woke up after, you know, probably about 3 months of being there, and woke up and realized like what I had done. But my first 6 months of being there, I cried every single day. I just cried and cried and cried and cried. And I didn't know why I was crying, but every time I opened my mouth, tears would come out of my eyes every single time. And I was having visits with my daughter at the library, and my mom had brought my daughter to come see me, and she was either drunk or had been drinking the night before, but the entire library smelled like alcohol. So the girl that had brought me to come see my daughter had me call CPS on my mom. I had to call CPS on my mom more than once because the phone calls that I would make to her, she would be drunk and I couldn't understand her. And so like I didn't think it was a good spot for my daughter to be. And like I was just trying, you know, what did I do? You know, I'm pregnant with this new baby. I'm thinking I'm gonna get an adoption set up because like I don't even have one kid. Why would I have another? And the dad's in jail again, another dad in jail, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. So this program is like behavior modification. It's very strict. You can't wear makeup. You have to change everything about yourself. And so I just learned. I relearned everything that I could. I learned how to be me again. And you know, I went to court one day for just a review hearing for my baby. I didn't think that anything was going to come of it. It was just like a check-in to see how you're doing. You know, are you still clean? Are you still there? Blah, blah, blah. And so I get there, and the worker tells me, like, I'm giving your mom 1 hour to get your daughter's things together, and she's coming home with you. I didn't have room for her yet. But we call back to the facility and tell them, like, my baby's coming home with me. And I'm thinking, you know, this is going to be beautiful because, like, you know, she gets her mom back. And she's 3. It had been about 18 months since I had been with her. And I remember just bringing her into the building and, like, nobody expected me to have this baby. So everyone's cheering and clapping and so happy for me. But it was a nightmare. She hated my guts. And she would kick me and scratch me and spit in my face. She would tell me that I wasn't her mom, that her grandma's her mom. And, like, she's 3 years old. I'm like, how does she even know what's going on? But, you know, all these rainbows and sunshines that I thought was going to happen at this reunification wasn't real. And so I had to rebond with this girl. And every time I told her I was coming back, like, I would have to come back at that time. I would have to listen to her scream and cry every time I dropped her off at daycare. But every time I had to come back, no matter what, I had to come back. And eventually, you know, she started trusting me again. I gave birth to my son on April 25th of 2016. His dad had came to the hospital. He's still my boyfriend to this day. We have been together about 5 years. But from then, I had gotten, you know, my own place. I did everything that I had to do to try to get back on my feet. I didn't know anyone in Saginaw, but I'm like, I've been everywhere else in this entire world, not knowing a single soul. Why can't I do this here? Except for make new friends, clean friends that are going to help me and be there for me and keep me sober. So, you know, I remember seeing one of the staff members walking around, and she had all the keys, you know, on her hip, and she had keys to every single door in that building. And I remember telling myself, like, I'm going to have that set of keys one day. And so I applied for a couple of internships, and I got denied because I just had some boundary issues that I needed to work on. And they were like, we're not hiring you if you can't separate yourself from these girls. And so, you know, I just kept on. I kept on. I graduated in December of 2016, and I went in the next morning, and my boss now called me in her office and offered me a job. She gave me a position. I was working with pregnant women, and ladies with babies up to a year old. I was somewhat of a recovery coach, but it was called like a parent advocate. I had been through recovery coach training, so I did that job for a little while. I then got moved to treatment administrator position, which is kind of like management, like you have to deal with all the money and kind of make sure the floor is running smoothly all day long, people are where they're supposed to be, all of that. And so I would like leave the bank, you know, every week with hundreds or, you know, sometimes $1,000 on me and thinking, wow, this program trusts me with all their money. This is crazy. I had found out I had a warrant out of Miami for a prostitution charge from when I was 19. I was paying on it so that I could get my license because they suspended my license that I never even had. But I was paying all this money every month trying to get my license back. But I had contacted the judge's chambers in Miami and said, like, I've been clean for a year. You know, I'm trying to get my license. I'm trying to change my life. Like, I can't come back to Miami to turn myself in. I just can't. And so she's like, okay, let me see what I can do. She called me back the next couple of hours and said, like, the judge told me that he's proud of your recovery journey and he's clearing all of your fines and reinstating your license. And so I didn't have to pay any more money and I got my license. I had never had a car. I had never, you know, drove legally. I never had a license. I was 26 when I got my license for the first time. And I was so excited, and I thought, like, you know, this is stuff that normal people are like, it's just normal stuff that you're supposed to be doing. Paying my electric bill. I thought, like, man, I can afford an electric bill. Like, this is really cool. Coming home every day and just having my schedule with my babies, and not worrying about where I was going to get my next one. I had a paycheck, and, like, I wasn't letting that thing go for the life of me. I remember I was sitting at the laundromat, and there was I looked down, and there was, like, about an 8-ball crack right in between my feet. Never in a million years would I have ever come across that when I was using, but I looked down, and it was right there, like somebody had dropped it. And so I called back to the facility and I'm like, somebody needs to come get me. Like, there's drugs right here. I can't do this. You know, I was like a year clean, and they came and got me and I got out of there. You know, the neighbors, I lived in a pretty bad part of the Saginaw, and my neighbors smoking weed, drinking every day. You want to hit this? You want to hit this? And I tell them, no, I'm sober. I'm sober. I can't. Just leave me alone. So I ended up getting my development plan to be a counselor. I started getting a couple of girls on my caseload, and you have to get like so many hours of supervision, so many hours of education. You have to take the test, and then after you're done with all of that, like, you submit for everything and you can get your credential. So you have to work 3 years full-time under the supervision of, you know, a licensed facility, and so that's what I was doing. I did all of that. I got my CADC in August, I want to say in August. And then I just had 5 years sober on October 2nd. I have an entire caseload of women that look up to me. And I could never imagine, like, my boss having to tell them that I relapsed. I could never imagine telling my family that I relapsed. And every day when I wake up, like, it doesn't matter how hard it is, like, I do it because it has to be done. And I couldn't even imagine going back to that life. Like, I couldn't even imagine losing all of my friends, the support system that I have. If they found out that I relapsed, they would be swarming my house. They would not let me keep going. And I am just so proud of myself, and
my friends, like watching them succeed, we're all clean. And we're all like in it together. And so every chance I get, I tell my story. Every chance I get, like, I would reach out to anybody that I can. My cousin has reached out to help. He's also about to have an internship for the same program. My stepbrother reached out for help. He has almost 3 years clean. He works for the same program. My mom has been to that same program. My boyfriend has been through that same program. Just the people that you can reach, it doesn't matter if it's 1 or if it's 1,000. Like, if you could help one person to tell them that, like, it's gonna be okay and it could be better for you, then that's what you have to do. But just the thought of even trying to get high doesn't even seem fun for me anymore, because of how paranoid I would be that people were gonna come try to save me out of this. Like, I couldn't even imagine going through it, because like I wouldn't even have fun. I would be like, oh my God, I lost my job. Oh my God, like my kids are gonna be gone. I would be so paranoid that I couldn't do anything to even enjoy my buzz, that it's not even worth it. I've made a life that I don't wanna escape from, and I'm not going back no matter what. Everything that I have been through is just a stepping stone for where I'm going tomorrow. I wouldn't change anything about my life, because I've had a good life. I've had a fun life. I've met a lot of people. I've been a lot of places. And I've done a lot of things. But if I wouldn't have relapsed back, you know, in 2015, then I wouldn't have my son right now. I wouldn't have my job right now. I wouldn't have went to this program. And I'm just grateful for everything that I've been through, because now I know that I can get through anything life hands me. Anything life hands me. I have a 401k. I have full coverage on my car. It's like, I couldn't even imagine having a retirement plan 5 years ago, you know? Like, I have money in the bank. If I get like to a certain level in the bank where like I'm less than this amount in my savings account, I freak out. I never have to want for anything, and like, it's such a good feeling to just buy things. My daughter is 7 now, and my son is 4. I'm still fighting with her sometimes just about, like, you know, the damage that I did throughout my pregnancy. Like, I consider, you know, if she's just acting like a 7-year-old, or if that's my fault because I smoked, you know, my entire pregnancy. Is that my fault? I feel guilty. We've been, you know, come across the cops one time, and she was like, Mom, are they gonna take me to Grandma's house? And it's just devastating, you know, and I tell her, no, baby, you're not going anywhere, don't worry. But one day I'll tell her, you know, what happened, and I'll explain it to her, but I'll be sober, and I'll have everything, and I'll use it as my way to help her get through, you know, whatever she has to get through. And she ain't getting nothing past me. So that's my story. I'm glad I had this opportunity. I thank you, Shane, for allowing me to come out here. I would tell it to the entire world. So thank you so much. I appreciate it, you guys.